Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're so great to see all of you. This is Openscapes' ninth community call, and we are recording to post on YouTube, and a live transcript is available. Um, so Openscapes is an initiative to help researchers do better science in less time. And through mentorship programs, we help research teams develop habits for data-intensive science that's more open, reproducible, collaborative, and kind. All Openscapes activities are bound by our code of conduct. And a summary of that is that we ask that you be respectful and value each other's ideas, styles, and viewpoints, and that you lead by example and match your actions with your words. I am grateful for the land where I am here in Santa Barbara, California, and I'd like to honor the Chumash peoples who have been and continue to be stewards of the lands and the waters here. Land acknowledgements are one way to amplify the knowledge and work of Indigenous peoples, and you're able to learn about the land that you are on through this link in the Google Doc. So we have a great plan for today. Our focus today is going to be on NASA Openscapes, which is a project to support scientific researchers using NASA Earthdata Cloud as they migrate their workflows to the cloud. And so the NASA Openscapes Mentor community is a group of user support staff across 11 NASA data centers who are developing and teaching common tutorials to support researchers using NASA Earthdata in the cloud. So as part of the 2023 fall meeting at AGU, NASA Mentors taught 4 hands-on workshops using all of these common materials. They also collaborated on 12 different talks and posters that leveraged common elements of the transition to the cloud. And as you can imagine, having a common approach to track and coordinate all of these moving pieces is important. And so we've been using GitHub Issues more and more for this. And the purpose of today's community call is that we wanted to share a challenge that we're actively working on openly and collaboratively so that we can share how it's going, see what's useful to others, and also get ideas from the community on how to improve this approach for us all. We're so excited that you're all here to learn with us. So the plan for the day, and I'm going to screen share briefly just to give you a view of this together. So you should be seeing this Google Doc that we've been putting in the chat. We're building a culture here where, let's see, that's great that everybody's writing, and it can sort of moves around a little bit. We're building a culture here where we're here to help each other out. And so we can create a rich resource here with each other from this conversation. So this document is not only our live agenda notes, but it's also a common place for us all to write notes and take screenshots or share links as we learn together. We use headers in this document to make it easier to navigate. You can always go to View, Show Outline View that will let you see all of these headers here, and you can jump to different places in the document. So you're welcome to write any questions you have throughout the whole time together in this discussions part. We'll have about 30 minutes with our 2 speakers, and then we will have time for discussion and questions. And we'll curate the questions, but also encourage folks to add their own responses or to unmute to ask questions too. So I will stop screen sharing now, and I will introduce our 2 speakers. So we have Bree Lind, who's joining us, who is a geospatial data scientist at NASA's Land Processes Distributed Active Archive Center, also called the LPDAC. Bree is formally trained as an ecologist and a remote sensing scientist and is deeply interested in facilitating the fusion of diverse remote sensing products with field data to enhance scientific insight. As a visual learner and a science-oriented coder, Bree is focused on making materials that are easy to understand and likes to convert challenging concepts into flexible and easy to apply approaches. And Stephanie Butland is a core team member with Openscapes, and she co-leads Champions cohorts. She is a research scientist by training and an open science and tech community builder by passion. And with that, we will turn the mic over to you. Thanks so much, you two. Excited to learn from you.
Thanks a lot, Julie. So yeah, again, thanks for being here today. I'm going to start off with a screen share just to continue orienting us towards our problem. And so this visual, I just really love. It kind of encapsulates Openscapes and the NASA mentors and kind of what we're trying to do. What's going on here, like if you kind of take a minute to let it sink in, is that this is just adorable animals, right? But these adorable animals are at the top of the trailhead helping other teams of animals. Helping other teams of animals navigate through a path to get to certain goals. And so there's a concept about working together and what we can achieve as a group and how we can navigate things better together. And there's the other concept of saying, like, it's really tough to work alone and to be isolated while you're trying to think about solving hard problems. And so the NASA mentor community, along with others who are kind of visualized here, like as the trail leaders and the welcomers, spend a lot of time with each other trying to plan events and work as a group and achieve common shared goals related to answering user questions and moving scientists to the cloud and doing all kinds of things with all kinds of overlap. So, and we're all like, there's like Julie said, 11 of the DACs, data archive, distributed active archive centers, are NASA DACs. But these are all basically in different buildings in different places and kind of like sub institutions. And then there's a whole group that aren't even NASA, but we work with super closely. And so we kind of needed a way to say, hey, like, who's here? What are we doing? When are we doing it? Like, where can we find overlap with each other and find out what's going on? Like, as the group grows, there's more and more things happening, like Julie mentioned at the American Geophysical Union meeting just this past December. We had a huge number of activities, and it's really helpful to have a space to kind of coordinate and co-strategize and co-plan and all be aware of the same deadlines and upcoming events, and also just be able to see what other people are up to and what events are happening kind of like for the whole year, like being able to plan in advance. So this GitHub calendaring is kind of what we've been using to coordinate. We're starting to use to coordinate across many of these different groups and say, hey, we all know that we've been attending the American Geophysical Union every year, but we don't all need to separately look up what the workshop deadline is and then what the abstract deadline is. And, the registration deadline, that can all be on a community calendar that we put together. We add the issue 1 or 2 times and then it's there for everyone to go see. And besides just having a centralized place to kind of keep track of what we want to do, sometimes you learn new stuff, like what different events are coming up that you, like, your group might also be interested in. So it's really exciting to kind of have this space. And I'm just like totally stoked that we've even kind of gotten it off the ground this far, because it's already a world of difference better than what we've been doing and the challenges we've been having with, like, some people being on Outlook, some people being on Google or Gmail and different things. It's hard across organizations sometimes to have a spot to work together. And this community calendaring space is starting to kind of
Bree,
resolve some of those issues.
Bree, did you mean to screen share the community calendar at this point?
I was actually just going to hand it over to Julie.
Perfect. Okay, I just wanted to be sure. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I'll stop sharing now. Sorry.
Bree, is that my cue to start sharing the community calendar? Or did you
Yeah,
have any
yeah.
last
Can you please share that?
Okay. And I want to say right from the start that I love when we were planning this, Bree and I both agreed, like we want this to be like a conversation. And we want people to sort of ask questions, make suggestions, and say, actually, we do this kind of thing that we think might help you. So at Openscapes, we really embrace working in the open and sharing how we work early on when the work feels like, oh, this really isn't ready to present. This is when we're actually sharing it. Because if we wait until we feel like it's perfect, it's probably not going to work really for the people who need it. And so this is what this community call is very much about. And Bree and I were agreeing. It's like we want it to be conversational. So anybody will be like cueing us as we go, and Julie may be chiming in and interrupting. So I am going to share. Okay. So not everybody knows how to find a GitHub project in GitHub. And so what I'm doing is I'm starting with the NASA Openscapes repository that we have, because when I first started working with GitHub projects, I could never remember how to find a project when I was in some repo somewhere. So we're here at NASA Openscapes, and here's the repositories tab, and to the right of that is the projects tab. So I click there, and I'm going to orient you to the main planning project. And immediately what you see is, a bunch of rows and columns, some names of things. Each of these things is a GitHub issue, and this section is labeled This Week in Progress. We've got some start dates, some labels, and this project takes in issues from a number of different repositories. So, we've got a repository called How We Work, which is like planning this community call, for example. We've got a repository for the Earthdata Cloud Cookbook that is a big collaborative project among the NASA Openscapes mentors. And we have a workshop planning repository that is for planning things like the AGU workshop and the conference itself, that so many people were participating in. So different ways of coordinating in one place. Now, there are different views for projects that I want to orient you to first. And kind of maybe the ultimate motivation of this one is being able to see things in a roadmap. So this roadmap view, you could see across the top, there are, this is February 2024, and this vertical red line is today, February 20th. So we've got this community call happening today. Also, immediately following this, we've got a couple of hours of NASA mentors hacking together on the Earth Access Python package. We can see that on the 26th, there's a presentation happening. The 28th, there's another collaborative presentation happening, etc. We can look at this different ways. So this is, this week in progress, anything that we're working on now-ish. We also have things this quarter upcoming, like what else is going on? And that prompts me to click on quarter here. So you can look at things at different levels. You could look at just this month. You could look at the quarter. You could look at the year. And what this allows anyone to do, anyone who doesn't necessarily need to know how to create a GitHub issue, how to work with this thing, you can look at this. You could take a screenshot and stick it in a presentation, and it's like, we're really busy. This is everything that's going on. So come back to quarter view. So this is kind of the goal, for people to be able to see what's going on and say, oh yes, I'm going to that conference as well. There's another view that's called the board view, where it takes each of these things. And so everything that's this week in progress is in this column. This quarter upcoming in another column, this year upcoming in another column, and peeking over here, it's like, here's all the things that we've done. They don't disappear because it's GitHub. But the view I look at most is what's, the table view, the status table. And what else did I want to say? I guess I'm not sure if I remember to say this, but the idea of these different views is you can get different information depending on these different views based on what you want to get out of it. So in the table view, again, every row in this case is a GitHub issue. We have dates here. Sometimes it's a deadline for a conference registration, or in this case, it's like the community call is happening today. We also have labels that you add to GitHub issues. You can assign issues to people. So Bree and I are assigned to this one. And we've got the repository. What did I want to say about that? Yes. So I can, for example, let's say Bree wants to know, so she's part of this land processes DAC. Maybe she wants to know, what are all the issues that my DAC is involved in? So if I go LP DAC, it will now show me. So and now it's filtered so that every issue is something that land processes DAC is involved in. You can also see here, this one is pretty collaborative, where it's LP DAC, National Snow and Ice Data Center, CDAC, etc. I can get rid of that. I can, again, maybe I want to see, I can also do this by filtering. So if I go filter by values, so I'm in the labels column. And if I go filter by values, it now shows me all the different labels that exist. And maybe I want to look at everything that's labeled co-working. And so these are all opportunities for groups of people to come together optionally and work together on a specific project, like the Earth Access hack that's happening in just under an hour. I can also sort, seems logical, sort by start date, so that now I can see everything happening. These issues aren't closed yet, even though the dates have passed, everything that's happening here up until the 29th. Etc. So what else? Let's inspect the community call issue. So this one is here. And we also use this we use an issue to take notes on what's going on. So we've got these labels. It's a community call. Bree is participating. It's LP DAC collaborative. This is where the project is labeled, and this is this week in process. I can, once we're finished all the components, I can click done and it will close the issue and it will go into the done column. And I can also edit what projects this is part of if I wanted to do that. What we've got here, and I think Bree's got some examples later about this, is a checklist of all the things we need to do to make sure this community call happened. And it was particularly helpful because I think it was last night, kind of late. I'm like, oh, I need to create the intro slides that you saw in the screen share at the start. So hooray for checklists associated with today's event. I am going to briefly show you. So let's say you are a person wanting to use this, you're planning to attend a conference, and in this, you'll add an issue. In my case, I know what I need to add is we always write a blog post summary on the call. We always write a blog post summary after each community call. So I can just type under here, and it's added it here. What I want to do, because you see this got a dotted outline, I want to convert this to an issue. And this one belongs in the How We Work repository. And now I can open this issue, and this is where I can do things with it. So I'll be responsible for the blog, but of course, Bree is going to contribute as well. I'm going to label it community call. And I think that'll do for now. And because I typed it in that main planning project, it automatically assigned it to the main planning project. Start date. Today's Tuesday. Let's say we will publish this next Wednesday, the 28th. And so now it has a start date. And I can choose to add any notes and fodder here. And now if I close that, let's see. We've got comm call summary, the 28th, and I'll be bold and click on the roadmap schedule. And so now I can see that this blog post is happening, should be published, the same day that there's an Earthdata webinar and there's something else going on there. So that's the orientation of like the technical, how we're using it now. And we kind of have a policy. We aim to document as we go. And so one of these collaborative projects I mentioned is this NASA Earthdata Cloud Cookbook. And so we're starting to document how to use this, what the repos are, how to add labels, for example, as we go. So I am going to now pass it on to Bree, who's going to give an example of another place that this is being adapted and extended in a slightly different context with another NASA deck.
Yeah, so I'd been waiting for something like this probably for like a year. I don't know how many times, Julia, I asked you, like, can we have a group calendar? Like, what about now? Do we have one yet? So once we kind of got the bones of this thing together, I was just so excited. I was like, oh, we should use this in more places. So what I was thinking is the LP deck has a pretty close relationship with the science team that's known, the emit science team. And emit is actually a sensor on the International Space Station. It's named the Earth Surface Mineral Dust Source Investigation. And so we have a really close relationship with the scientists on in this group. And the imaging spectrometer collects extremely high quality imagery that can be applied to all kinds of different problems. It can see methane from space. It can be used to look at mineralogy. It can really be very broadly applied. But what's important to know is cool science is happening with the emit team. LP works with emit. And so we wanted a way to do that a little bit more fluidly. So let me just take you guys to this space that we have. I call it the LP emit synergy space. And so there's a little bit of a different idea here, where it's like two teams that really, really know they want to work together. And so one of the things that we do is we have a very similar setup. Like these are all adjustable. Like you can change the name in progress this quarter and this year. But this layout seems to make a lot of sense. Like Steph was saying, you can search for things and filter so we know what the upcoming meetings are. But one thing we also needed was just like a place to take notes together. And so every time we meet, like what happens? We have a bunch of stuff that we need to go through and talk about. And so what I've started to do is kind of link components of the agenda to issues that we need to talk about. So it's just like way easier than ever to document things. One thing that I even found out today is like, sometimes I really like to have this notes thing out. You can even pin it. So like now it's just going to be there. And like, you can still go through your different views to kind of see what's going on. and kind of make adjustments as you need to kind of to see the schedule, but you could still see this group notes section. And so I have been kind of like pretty diligent about taking good notes and kind of going back over them over the meetings. But what's really great is like before this, we didn't have a spot to do that. And now everyone can get to it and everyone can add things to the agenda and bring stuff up to talk about. Another thing that's really cool is like the multiple assignees. So like Eric's going to be Eric and others will be putting together a slide deck for this methane plume webinar we have coming up. So I was able to link to the agenda doc. I have like, hey, put your slides into this space. We have the whole thing. And like, as we move forward, in the agenda, it's linked back to this issue and we can revisit things and have our notes. So we are really actively using this space to kind of do more things in the open and have less files hidden between our actively collaborating groups. So there, in theory, over time, there should be less of like, hey, where's this document? Or like, can you email this to me or whatever? Because it's all kind of here so that we can all see it, which I think is really exciting. And so another thing we've been doing as a group is, I tagged 4 people in here. So even if you can't, sometimes like depending on the affiliation of the repo and the project, sometimes you can't always assign everyone that you might want to an actual issue, but you can always tag anyone in the description part. So that's been really great. And yeah, like this is just making this cross-institutional open sharing of information, like, and open sharing of information and progress, just like so much easier than it has been in the past. And then I guess as like kind of a fun fact, we built this project Space First that Steph was showing you, the main planning. And I'll show you right now, like I had all of these, I had emit tagged for all these things. And I was actually able to pull over anything that I tagged with emit and put it into the new project, put it into the synergy space. So I didn't even have to rewrite like the original issues that I had in here. I was just able to pull them over to this new project space. And it was like an extremely pleasant experience because I was thinking, man, I've got so much work.
Do you remember how you did that? Because
that's a great question. I was going to maybe say something, but then I was like, sheesh, I'm not sure.
Same. You figure out how to do something, you're like, oh, how did I do that again?
And then I'm bragging about it. Let's see. So, well, this one's not a, let me do it the opposite way. I'll take one from, that we have over here in the emit synergy space. And I think I'd like to add it to the LP DAG space. This one would, the Openscape space. Let's see. So I'll click in here. Well, okay, this would be the time where someone is also like a hero and it's like, yeah, I've done that before. And they just jump in and save me. Or I can just admit that I can't remember the exact way, but it was actually very easy. I think I probably Googled it at the time. So let me just do that quick. Export issue from one GitHub project to another. Yeah, that's the thing. Sometimes like the documentation is really helpful. So let's see. Let's try that. In the list of issues, click the issue you'd like to transfer. So, whoops, I'll go. Well, that's not the same view we have.
I didn't mean to divert you. It's okay.
I'm like, I can save it.
Yeah.
I might not be able to save it. Oh, you know what? I think it, we'll just try this one thing real quick here. I think there's multiple ways to do this. So if we go into like main planning.
Oh, Matt was saying, and again, I didn't mean to ask you to pursue this when it would take a while. But Matt was saying, I think you must be in the full issue view, not the project view. So when you're in the project view and the issue is open, there's a button you can click that says like, open this issue separately. So pick an issue.
Like this. Open it bigger. Nope.
No.
You can
That's
also
what?
click number.
Yeah.
Man,
Why don't we leave this? Because I put you on the spot and
I'm starting to
I will
sweat.
track that. But we can
Okay,
move on.
so
Sorry,
this
Bree.
is definitely something to talk about more, but I do promise you it was very pleasant when I first did it and I wasn't being watched. I'm going to stop the share now.
Excellent. Well, there's a lot of excitement in the chat and some great questions. I think one question that we could start with that I think you touched on a bit, Bree, comes from Chris H. He asked, what are some of the best practices or quirks you've run into while using GitHub projects? And I think what came to mind is when you were screen sharing, Bree, that when you're trying to tag a person in an issue, they actually need to have permissions to that repository. And that was, so as we have multiple repositories going on, that's been one kind of quirk. But do you have others that come to mind, Bree?
I have the first quirk that we encountered. I think that's a really good one. But the first one we encountered as a group, Steph showed right off the bat, but this repository thing, it's important. It's more important than you think on the front end to think about what repository you're in, because these repositories are also where the labels live. So I got really excited about the labels, and they're just like a really dynamic way to tailor the space to your needs. But all of these labels, like a lot of the ones that I made initially were in workshop planning, and I didn't realize that. So when Steph first put up this community call thing here, and this is in how we work, that isn't where the LPDAC label lived. I had to go and open her issue, and then I had to say like, no, I really want to open it on the full page, which that happens somewhere.
You can click the title, or there might be a link down there. There's a few places.
Yeah.
Yep.
So then,
there you go.
Perfect. So then you really have to open it on the full page, and then you have to go to labels, and then you have to scroll down to the bottom of labels and say edit labels. So, LPDAC lives here in this label thing now because I added it. But unless you go into this edit label space for a given issue, you're constrained to the labels that you have inside that repo, if that makes sense. What about you, Steph? Did you have any that got you?
I think you covered them well. And I think in terms of quirks, it's very much, it's like you think it's a quirk until you understand what's going on. And so we keep poking at it. And so, I think we started something, Bree totally dove in and like really built it out, added labels, added like so many of these issues with conference dates. Bree added those things, labeled, sorted them. It's like, oh, look, start date. And, based on Ian's suggestion, made the roadmap. a lot of these things feel quirky until you take the time to figure it out. And it's like, oh, other people know how to do this. We are figuring it out. Yes.
Yeah. But then the cool thing is too, that like, you don't have to know all of those quirks to just add an issue, just to press the add an issue button and get something out. So it's also like user friendly in a sense.
Great. I think we'll get to questions that are in the doc and the chat, but I see Camila, you have your hand up. You want to ask a question too?
Yeah, thank you. Just to mention, like, another thing that I've encountered like sometimes weird is like you have to share. I think someone mentioned that you have to make sure people have access to the repo, but also access to the project, and there are like two independent invitations. And I feel sometimes that kind of it's like, oh, I shared with you the repo, but then I didn't share with you the project. Yeah,
100%. We had that the other day. I was thinking it would be really lovely to have some kind of notification like, hey, you shared the project, but they don't have as much access as you thought. Because the permissions aren't necessarily cascading the way you would think in your head.
Great. And Joseph, I see your hand up too. Did you have a comment on this topic?
I'm not sure it's on this topic. It's a general question.
Okay.
If it's okay, I'll just go ahead. My question is, I mean, you're speaking my language. I use GitHub a lot, but I also work with a lot of different groups who either don't use GitHub or who've been dragged kicking and screaming to use GitHub, others who don't use GitHub yet, et cetera, et cetera. So I was just curious, a couple questions like, first one is there a kind of technical background? Because it seemed to me that a lot of what you showed, you could use GitHub without ever writing a commit. You could use it simply as a project management tool. So I was curious if there was really any technical hurdles for this that anyone would need to face, or can you just use it as a project management tool? That's the first question. And then the second question.
Can we
great. Let's start there.
One question,
Okay.
and then we'll like let someone else. We've got a bunch of questions in the doc too.
Okay,
but to address your question, this is absolutely something we were thinking of and other people were saying. So yes, being able to use GitHub, and we're using it with text, and no one needs to know how to make a commit, and no one has to write code. But we were very conscious in doing this, where I'm always tempted to say like, oh, let me make a template for this issue that people can use. But we wanted to make sure we weren't using things yet like issue templates, GitHub actions. It's like, let's keep it as low a barrier as possible so that the broadest, swath of people can feel like they can start to contribute.
And Bree, as a follow-up to that, Andy, along the same theme, had asked how eager were folks, were science team members to adopt GitHub projects, and particularly for those who hadn't used GitHub before. So maybe you could comment on that thread too.
Yeah. And also I have like a dirty secret, which is I'm not really good at GitHub like at all. And I have probably made less than 10 real pull requests like with code. So I share that because I think that this is low-hanging fruit. I have been surrounded by people using GitHub a lot lately, and I'm starting to get way more comfortable with it. But the fact that it's like very accessible, like you can immediately change the colors on the labels, like you can make a label, like it's pretty user-friendly. But there does need to be a certain willingness to engage and like use a new thing. And I think that kind of was really strong for me because we have such an awesome group of people from different organizations that like really want to work together. And we have been like, I have been desperately searching for a tool, and it's not Google Calendar. Like we can't make that work for everyone. So yeah, and we were really lucky with this Emit Science team is very open science forward, and they already have GitHub repos, and they they do a lot of their science on GitHub, actively collaborating with each other and other scientists from different institutions in that way. But they hadn't done this kind of open calendaring, open project management thing. And so the people that were kind of leading that team were like, yes, let's figure that out. And so this is like really legit new. Like, I don't think it's even been a month since we've come up with this. So we're in early stages, but the need of like, how can we work together is really strong. And so I guess I'm wondering if like, yeah, dragging someone kicking and screaming through GitHub is like pretty tough. And like visually, I think it can be challenging for people who don't look at it often to orient themselves in traditional GitHub spaces. But this calendaring space seems a little bit different because you have different viewing options and it's like pretty hands-on. So I think with like a gentle introduction, like maybe it wouldn't be so bad for people who are not quite as sure. But I think the big thing is like they have to want to have a space to work together. They have to be like, man, it would be better to have this like in a space where we don't have to rewrite or recopy the link for a certain registration like 10 times. Like, let's just put it here once. We can all see it. That kind of helps, I think.
I'm going to pick up on another question that was in the chat from Andy. Has it been a hard sell getting people in government agencies on board with this level of transparency? And coming from what you just talked about, Bree, on like having a space and people who are excited to have a system together, I wonder if you want to comment on that at all, or if anyone else in the room wants to comment.
I'll take a quick stab at it. This is new. Openscapes is a third space. Like, so we get to do third space stuff. This is one of those things. I think there's definitely questions, but like across different spots of government, like there's all kinds of stuff going on. So like culturally, I think some groups would be super down and some groups would be like, well, I don't know if that's really for us or that's not allowed yet. But like in this third space is, I think, the spot, and other people can do it elsewhere to have like the proof of concept being like, actually, it's really nice to, I mean, the foundation's already there. Like NASA has JIRA and whatever, all those boards and everything for the organization. But like, the thing is, when you drill down into it, like we don't just work with each other. So the idea of being able to apply this to working together with different groups, I think, has pretty strong precedent in a sense.
Thanks, Bree. And yeah, Stephanie notes that there's lots of people on this call with government experience. Curious what others think about the ease of adoption.
I guess
Yeah,
since I asked the question, I can say from my experience, I worked in the British Columbia government for about 15 years and went through a similar process of trying to help people get working in the open. And my experience was like most of I guess this is not, well, it's probably 50-50. I would say researchers, like scientists were uncomfortable with it almost as much as leadership were for different reasons. And I think a couple of things that we found successful was like start small and like work within government process, like write a briefing note and say like, we want to open this one repository with this information in it. Can we have your approval? Yes. And do that a few times until they get tired of it. And then say like, can we have blanket approval to do this if we stay within these parameters? And so like starting small to build comfort so they can you can demonstrate what they did is what's my experience. Worked really well. And then like show your own work especially for the researchers who are uncomfortable with like putting their work out there. Sharing your code is like a scary thing. And if you can point to people saying like, I do it, this is like, my code's ugly and messy too, it's fine. And it gets better if we can share it with each other. And I know we're not talking about code here, we're talking about process, but I think there's similar parallels. So I'm really interested, like in such a big organization, there must be such a wide array of reactions.
Is there a sense that with the different NASA data centers, because we have people from several of them, is there a sense the different data centers have different sort of like feelings about adopting this? And anyone's welcome to speak up to that.
I think the different data centers are probably, we are in the start small building stage. So I am at the LP DAC. I saw this. I've been craving it. I put everything that we're doing on this calendar, almost like literally everything. And like in our group, like I actively have this open and I'm always querying like LP DAC or meeting or seeing like what other people are doing. So there is a level of like buy-in. And I think like one of the things that's really cool about Openscapes is like people do stuff at their own pace and it's fine. So like if this becomes more useful to the group, that's great. It's already really useful just to have the co-calendaring and have the big picture events that we all kind of see coming down the line in advance. And we're seeing like, oh, I didn't know you guys were like, people are at the same conference coming up in Greece, like in June. Like we didn't know that. Now we know. And like there can be more of a plan. So like you find out things that you wouldn't necessarily find out in a group meeting, like when you check this. But yeah, I really like, Andy, your point of starting small and showing your work. I think that's kind of where we are now. And I will just say, like, to your point of like the different work, and also Andy's other question, Andy Barrett's question about how do people feel about it. Yeah, even some people on the science team that were like, legit, yeah, let's do this, totally. And then I was like, well, how do you feel about like maybe putting a lot, like an issue in, like saying when you might deliver some data? He was like, I don't know, like, I don't want to be held accountable for that. And I'm like, dude, just, it's, we're just doing a rough calendar here. Like, no one's gonna nail you down.
Yeah. Andy Barrett has his hand up, maybe to speak to this issue. Go ahead, Andy.
Well, it wasn't entirely that issue, but I think.
Can you also tell us who you are, because you're with NASA DAX?
Yeah, I'm Andy Barrett. I am both a research scientist and a member of the NSIDC DAC. I specialize in sea ice and Arctic hydroclimatology, but my involvement here is kind of promoting open science and cloud adoption. So I think one of the things I see, and I'd be interested on other people's ideas, is that there is kind of this buyer lock-in, in that I think NSIDC is very much wedded to Confluence and Jira, which I really find hard to use. But and I guess other DACs, and I know NASA use it as well. So there's this lock-in, but the problem is it doesn't allow for collaboration outside of the organization, as well as say maybe GitHub does, especially if, you know, in a science role we might have multi-institution teams working on something, and I really like kind of what GitHub offers in that space. But I'm kind of just wondering kind of what people's thoughts are on, I guess it's kind of inertia, right? To move to something new. And my mind is, well, you show them it's better, but it's easier to use. But you know, I wonder what other people's views are to get people to adopt this. But I do like start small. I think that's a good advice.
I wonder, yeah, like sort of show, not tell, start small and show that this can work. And I'm seeing Alan's comment in the chat as well. Also thinking maybe we could shift to one more sort of tactical question while we've got each other on the line and screen sharing. And Amy, I'm looking at your question in the doc. So maybe even if you wanted to screen share to show us what you mean exactly, but your comment said, it doesn't seem like there are good options out of the box for capturing repositories across organizations within a single project. Have others explored this as well? So this is something that, you know, the two boards that Steph and Bree showed were both within the NASA Openscapes GitHub organization. We also have an Openscapes organization where we have other issues. And so are there ways to bridge across GitHub organizations? Does anyone have any comments on that solution?
Yeah, and Julie, thanks for calling that out. I don't know what I would screen share right now.
That's okay.
But this is definitely something speaking of like adoption and us really wanting to pursue this as well. And I'm also at one of the, also at the NSIDC DAC. But, you know, we are collaborating in more and more spaces and contributing to repositories that don't just live in our NSIDC GitHub, right? So all those repos that belong to that organization. And we've hit some roadblocks in terms of trying to set up a single project that would kind of capture and sort of show issues from the Openscapes repositories or other repositories. And it seems fairly limited. I think there's some tiers as well that, you know, we have to deal with in terms of like the free tier you get with GitHub versus maybe some other features you get if you pay. But it's been challenging to find. It seems like we have to find our own one-off solution, and I would imagine others exist out there. So if anyone knows or has experimented with that, I'd love to hear about it.
Like, so there's some ideas around hooks and GitHub Actions that might have to be on like a user level or org level, but something to explore maybe.
I do know though, like for our example, if there wasn't a space like Openscapes to say like, yeah, let's try that out here and not worry about the different organizations, like you could quickly run into like, okay, who's really going to be in charge of it or that kind of thing. So we've just sidestepped that entirely by putting everything in the NASA Openscapes space. But that's an important thing to think about moving beyond.
Great. Well, I think we are at 5 minutes to the top of the hour, so we will move into closing unless there was any last burning thought from anyone. Okay. Well, we really appreciate all of you being here and sharing your ideas and thoughts and these big questions about openness and government, and then the sort of nitty-gritties in making the issues and moving things around. So really appreciate you all being here. We will post this video to YouTube, and as part of a blog post later next week. You saw Steph make the issue, so you know it's coming. We're going to share an efficiency tip of the day, and I'm going to screen share briefly to show you this because this is something I just learned from Steph and Bree yesterday. So our efficiency tip of the day is if you come into GitHub and you press the question mark key, it will pull up the search bar, which is super awesome. And this can be anywhere that you're in GitHub, in a repository, in a project, or elsewhere. So very cool. And our inclusion tip of the day that we end with on all of our community calls is to embrace the power of yet for all of us. And we can avoid terms like newbies or experts or that kind of delineation that narrowly define people's skills. So we can try to say things like newer or less experienced or seasoned or more experienced folks as you're as we're welcoming more people to using tools like these. So there's more about the power of yet from Dr. Carol Dweck on the internet, and also we've got some documentation about it as well. So thank you all so much. This is super awesome. Thanks for all your comments, and thanks Bree and Steph for all of your preparation and sharing.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks so much, everybody.
Have a great rest of the day.